there's going to be a verdict in the George Floyd trial this hour. And before I came to this, it wasn't there, but it may very well happen over the course of our conversation or as we wrap it up, which is just weird.
Yeah, I saw a really great post that was like, prepare yourself for how you're going to feel for either outcome, and just acknowledge that, like, we do have feelings about these things and the news doesn't
Yeah.
not affect us, which I thought was really great. And there's no good outcome to this because someone has
No.
already died. But I do think the idea that people understand that these things are important and that they do affect us feels newer. And so I do feel positively about the fact that we're at least acknowledging these things in a way that we weren't even a few years ago.
Yeah. What's so hurtful to me is how long it took for Black America to get the rest of everybody else to catch up and see how bad it is. And like, you have to have this trial with national coverage where there's video of a guy being choked out for 8.5 minutes for finally, it seems, a majority of the country to say, yeah, that's not right. And it's like, even if there is a verdict that punishes a man for his crime, I'm very angry that it took this long and this much grotesque suffering for this reality to be seen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's really, when you think about it, a little bit gross because I've definitely seen people tweet like, well, I didn't know this was this big of a problem. And now that I've seen this case and this case and this case and this case. And when you think about that, it's like, oh, that meant that there was a number
Yes.
of people that it took
Yes.
you to feel empathy. That one death wasn't enough, 3 deaths wasn't enough. You got to a certain number and was like, now I can feel empathy for this group of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think also, particularly with the George Floyd case, part of it was also COVID. People were home and didn't have their normal outlets for distraction. And so were sort of like forced to engage with this. And I do hope that there's some soul searching around the fact that, like, if that's what it took for you, you kind of have to ask yourself, where are my empathy levels that it didn't take just one for me to be like, this isn't right?
Yeah. And it's like, I think of like other instances in which society might say, well, fix it. Like, if a bank gets robbed once, you install a new alarm system, you change your protocols, you get a few
But
more
Sam,
security
money
guards.
is valuable.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's so, I've kind of gotten numb. I think I was really shaken up when George died, and then that first week or two of protest, and then I think I had to put that part of my soul on autopilot. I wonder how you handle the emotions or bundle them up when you also have to work. Like, I see you online talking about these issues, these serious issues, but you're also about to launch a new season of a comedic sketch show, which is very different from what we've just been talking about.
Yeah, it's an interesting niche that I found myself in my career, where, like, right now I write on the Amber Ruffin show, so I do write about these issues. And then, yes, I'm also promoting a Black Lady sketch show, which is just a fully fun, not political, not topical show at all. And it's almost like that's kind of how I can set up my year, you know, to like,
Huh.
okay, I can spend some time engaging with these issues, but I'm also going to give myself some time to just have fun, because I do think it's really important that that comedy, especially late night comedy, address these things, because I think for some people, these issues are either so painful or even just so uncomfortable that it's very easy to just like turn off the news and not want to engage in it. And so I do think a lot of times a comedy show, particularly the way that Amber is so sweet and bubbly, and putting a few jokes in that, are going to get some people to engage that wouldn't have otherwise. So I think that's really important work to do. But I, as a human being, then also need to go put on some wigs and do some just fun comedy and have balance in my life.
Yes. Which wig was your favorite for the newest season of A Black Lady Sketch Show?
Well, you see in the trailer, there's like a gorgeous purple wig, just so like I'm playing like the most ratchet pregnant lady, and that's probably the best wig of the bunch.
The category is Ratchet Pregnant Lady. I love it. I love it. So, for those listening who haven't watched the show yet, tell them what A Black Lady Sketch Show is.
It is exactly what it sounds like. It's a sketch show by all Black ladies, Black women writers, directors, producers, cast. And I think that especially in this year, it's going to be just such a joy. It's just full of silliness and absurdity and comedy. And I think it'll be a lot of fun for folks.
Yeah, I was able to watch the first 2 episodes before this interview, and I was thinking the same thing that I was thinking when I watched Eric. Last week I watched Eric Andre's Bad Trip, and that movie and this show are these 2 wonderful instances of just unmitigated, unbridled Black joy, Black absurdity, Black comedy. I don't have to think about trauma. I don't have to think about larger levels of meaning. I don't have to like get caught up in anything that feels too stressful. It's just joy. And I think that like, with him, you got this prank movie, and with you have this sketch show, but these are things that are being done in a way that is incredibly radical to see that level of Black joy and humor and comedy in the face of what feels like a year and a half of bad headlines and bad news concerning Black bodies. So it meant a lot more to me than I thought it would, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. I think that's also how we as a people have survived for this long, is that we do find joy and art and beauty in a lot of difficult things. Like I personally, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, a joke that someone tells at a funeral, you will laugh harder than you will at any other joke. And so I think, sketch comedy to me has always been my art form. Is that when I discovered that art form, I was like, this is where I belong. And I think part of what can be radical about sketch is that it allows for so much change, to play so many different characters, to go to so many different environments, to see one performer, one cast in so many different lights, which is just what the nature of sketch is. But then when we are doing it as Black women, it does become radical because we're so used to seeing Black women in one light, which is often connected to suffering, unfortunately.
Yeah. Or even just seeing Black women in spaces doing things you don't usually see. Like there's one sketch in the new season where it's like 3 or 4 Black women who enter a bank with guns and look as if they're about to hold the bank up, but they don't. Something else happens. And I realized I haven't seen a bunch of Black women in a bank with guns since Set It Off.
Yep.
That movie from like the early 90s. And just the quiet radicalism of not like, there's no pretense around the sketch. It just starts. And you're like, boom, there it is. It's cool.
And thank you. When you're doing so many sketches too, you don't have to worry that if you do that sketch, it's going to be like, oh, they're saying all Black women are bank robbers. It's like, no, because 2 minutes later, we're going to be doing something completely different.
Yeah. Well, and in the sketch, y'all don't end up exactly robbing the bank. How much of that sketch can we give away without spoiling the sketch?
None. I'll get in trouble. People just have to. If you're intrigued by bank robberies, watch the show.
Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah. So there are new sketches like that one, but there are also some sketches that come back from season 1, which I really love. And one of them is this recurring sketch motif almost throughout the first season, now the second, in which a group of Black women are the only ones that have survived the apocalypse, the literal end of the world. How are those women doing now in season 2 post-apocalypse?
Well, I don't want to give anything away. I know that is the thing that people have been tweeting at me and asking me for the past.
They're worried about the
year.
women.
Yes. Who's at the door? What are they doing? And so your questions will be answered immediately in the first episode. But what I love about those interstitials is we're all playing versions of ourselves But that's maybe one of the worst versions of myself, the character that I play there. And it is so much fun to play. And I remember on set that being like, wow, Ashley, that was mean. And I was like, yeah, I get it all out here because I don't act that way anywhere else.
Describe
So,
that character for our listeners. How mean? What kind of mean?
yeah, well, she's loosely based on me. So, like, as you know, I was doing my PhD when I dropped out to start doing comedy. And so she's the version of Ashley who has stayed in academia the whole time and just really enjoys telling people what they're wrong about.
Yes.
It's very fun to indulge that side.
Yeah, I bet. So, I mean, and I suppose there is a certain beautiful symbolism in black women and only black women being the ones that make it through the apocalypse, because you don't see that a lot either. Is there like if there is a meta larger meaning or a question you want folks to grapple with in the symbolism of black women surviving the apocalypse, what might it be?
It's interesting because obviously we wrote the first season before anyone had ever heard the word COVID. And so then when we actually did all end up going into quarantine and lockdown, people were like, are you guys witches? So I think it's interesting. It does almost speak to the resilience of black women that before this even happened, we imagined a world where it happened and made it joyful and fun. And I know so many people watch this show while they were actually in lockdown. So it is like weirdly prescient in that way.
Yeah. What else do listeners say about that? And besides like, whoa, y'all are like future tellers.
Well, now people are asking us, can you please write that good things happen?
Yeah. Another carryover from the first season that I was really hoping y'all would bring back because it was so good in season 1. It's Black Lady Courtroom. And the premise is simple. You've got a courtroom with the judge and a jury and lawyers and defendants and prosecution and a bailiff, and they're all black women. And it is this celebration in the first season. All these black women excited to see this thing that they have not seen before, and it becomes a party. You brought it back in season 2. What makes y'all hold on to that sketch?
That was probably the number one sketch that people responded to on Twitter, on Instagram. And we got so many beautiful pictures of people being like, Black Lady Surgical Suite, Black Lady Dentist Office, like wherever that was happening in real life, people were taking their picture and send it to us. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, we could not come back and not go back to that because we just have to honor those fans who are telling us how much that sketch meant to them. And to me, that's like such a classic sketch because when I wrote it, a lot of times I just like try to think of a very small moment in life and try to think, okay, how could you blow this out to its biggest, comedic conclusion? And that moment where you look across the room and make eye contact at another black woman and you're happy that she's there, but you don't necessarily feel like you could say that out loud and you guys just have that little silent look. I just wanted to blow that out comedically as much as possible. And to me, that's just a comedy thing, right? That's just a classic thing that we do. But then seeing the audience response, it was like, oh yeah, they have that moment too. And it's relatable to them. And that's why they love that sketch that much. And of course, coming out of quarantine, everyone wants to have a lot more of those moments, right? Where you just seeing people is exciting right now.
Listen. I can't wait to end up in a bar and it's like Black People Bar. And just seeing that sea of like black humanity, I'm like, I miss it so much.
Yes.
I don't want to talk to all of them. I just want to see them.
Those moments at a party where like a song from the 90s comes on and everybody just has to stop and like sing along the whole room. Yes. That's what I'm waiting for.
Right. One day. Black Lady After Times. That's what we want.
Yes.
Let's pull up my next questions for you. A lot of these sketches play with the idea of what life would be like for black women if black women were in charge or if there were just black women, only y'all. If that day ever came in the U.S., in the world, where it's an only black lady day, what would be the first thing you do?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, probably go get my hair braided because it takes such a long time. But if I wasn't hurrying to get to something else, I wouldn't have to feel guilty about that time spent.
Yeah, yeah. And what would be the last thing you did in an only black lady
Before
day?
bed. Um, Probably just hang out with some girlfriends.
There you go. With no one else watching, just y'all doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So when we talked last, you were working on Samantha Bee's show,
Hmm.
which has a team more diverse than most late night shows, but like it wasn't all black when you were there. What is the biggest shift in just your work day to day, working with and in a team as black as the one that you're on now versus, I don't know, any other team?
Yeah, two big things. From a writing standpoint, you just have to explain yourself a lot less,
Mm,
especially on a news-based show, but on any show where you're the minority. If you are bringing in a story that reflects your experience or the experience of your community, you kind of may have to explain the history behind it or what it is you're talking about, or like, okay, there's this thing that we do before you start pitching the comedy of it.
yeah.
And so you almost have two jobs to do. And so when I
Mm,
got into an all black woman room, and actually the first sketch that I pitched on the very first day was that Patti LaBelle sketch. And
oh my
Robin
God.
reminded
Iconic.
me,
Iconic.
yeah. Well, it's very weird, and it's good to pitch something really weird the first day, just let people know what your brain is like.
I'm here.
But Robin reminded me that I started my pitch. You know Patti LaBelle, and in that room, everybody knows Patti LaBelle. You don't
Everybody
have to
knows
do.
Patty.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have to do that work. And I don't think I realized how much extra work I was doing until I didn't have to do it. And I just didn't have to caveat or explain things. I could just pitch the comedy. And
How does that
then
feel?
I mean, I just had extra energy left over. It felt great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then as an actor, the biggest thing, and a lot of black actors, particularly women, talk about this, is just being able to walk in the hair and makeup trailer and know that the person in there knows how to do your hair and makeup. It's
Come on.
really stressful to show, because as actors, you just, if you're not a regular on a show, you're just showing up to set and you have no idea what's going to happen when you get there. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you get there and the people are not equipped to take care of you, and you're going to be on TV and you want to look good. And for myself, especially as a plus size woman, I always want to come correct. So it can be really stressful to start your day before you even get to the acting and emoting and knowing your lines and all that good stuff. You sort of start the day with like, okay, will the people here just be able to do my hair and makeup?
Well, whoever's doing it right now, it looks great. I'm loving that. It's giving me Beyonce vibes. It's
I
along
feel
great.
like a cool genie.
There you go. There you go. um, having experienced both kinds of workspaces, some that are all black or close to all black, and those that aren't, what might you recommend folks working in spaces that aren't all black or aren't all women do to make those spaces better for black people and for women and black women?
Oh, that's a great question. A big thing and a small thing. A small thing
Mm-hmm.
in comedy, this is actually, it can be fun, but comedy can be really competitive because everyone's trying to
Yeah.
get their joke in. And I
Yeah.
noticed that once you get above 50% women, it's much less competitive. And women are
Huh.
much more likely to be like, her joke is better, take that one.
Okay.
And that is just a more pleasant workplace.
Sounds
So
like it.
I mean, it totally makes sense why people are competitive about wanting to get their thing in, but I think just sort of reducing that energy and increasing the energy of we're all making something together and we all want it to be as good as possible. So it doesn't have to be my idea, it's the best idea. I think calms everyone down and everyone just has a more pleasant experience. Um, and then on a bigger level, I think it can be really hard. So I don't say this like flippantly, but I think people need to reduce their defensiveness around race. I think a lot of times in the room, you're having these conversation about a story and you might say something like, oh, well, maybe we don't want to represent this character that way, or I know that you're just like innocently pitching this, but this is kind of a trope about Black people, and maybe we don't want to do that. And I think the natural response to that for a lot of white people is to immediately be defensive and be like, you called me racist and I'm not. I mean, Sharon Osbourne is doing the
I have a Black child
tour right now, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that if you can just, when that feeling comes up, take a deep breath and stop and have gratitude for the person in the room who's telling you this, who, if you're the boss, you've paid to tell you this, who is saving you a very bad dragging on Twitter by saying it quietly internally in the room and not publicly.
Yes.
And if you're feeling those defensive emotions, maybe you go take a walk around the block before you come back in the room. But that moment, if you choose to indulge your defensiveness and shut that person down, you could shut that creativity down in the room, not only for them, but for the other writers who heard them get a negative response. You could be setting yourself up for a month of long, quiet days, as opposed to, you know, just take a deep breath and be like, oh, that's hard for me to hear, but thank you for telling me. You know what? I'm going to sleep on that and let's talk about it tomorrow, and just not immediately respond with that defensiveness.
Yeah. What I hear you saying is less of this, more of this.
Yeah.
As the great Tyra Banks said, learn something from this. Learn something. That's all you're asking.
We were rooting for you.
Yes, we were. Oh my goodness. Before I let you go, I got to ask you a question that's just not about Black Lady Sketch Show. I want to check in on your friendship with one Elizabeth Warren. How's she doing? How are y'all doing?
I feel like I owe her a call, because I genuinely believe, and I know this makes me sound crazy and delusional, but I truly believe that if she and I got in a room with Joe Biden, we could get these student loans canceled. So
if y'all are listening, set this up.
Set up the meeting between the two of us. She has all the knowledge and the facts. I just have personal experience and a lot of student loans. And if we could just share that with Joe Biden, I really think we could do it.
There you go. You know, folks might not know listening, you first connected with Warren, and correct me if I'm wrong, when everyone was saying that she was a candidate, she has a plan for everything. You were like, Warren, can you get a plan for romance for me? Right? Was that it?
Well, but let me correct you, because the way she did it is so funny. I tweeted, do you think Elizabeth Warren has a plan for my love life? I did not tag her. I did not address her. She somehow found this tweet and responded, DM me, and then gave me a call. And I immediately was like, I love you. I love your campaign. So this is during the campaign, and just thanking her for all the great issues she brought up. And she was like, let's talk about this love life. Like, when you present her with a problem, she wants to find a solution.
There you go. Was there one bit of advice or help from her that made you say like, I'm going to keep that and take that with me?
Oh, her advice was great, and I just need to grow enough to implement it. But she basically said, start from your knowledge of what you bring to the table. And what was really great, the way that she sees people, I think, is so inspiring. And she named things that I had done in my career, and, you know, working with Samantha Bee and things like that. And she's like, you've done all these things. You're bringing so much to the table. Don't start from a place of lack. Start from a place of, this is what I have to offer. And it was just really meaningful for someone in the middle of their presidential campaign to like take the moment to say that to me.
Yeah. I know it probably cannot happen, but I would not mind a Liz Warren cameo on Black Lady Sketch Show season 3. I wouldn't mind it.
I think it's unlikely, but I think I have just as good of a chance of getting that meeting with Joe Biden.
Yeah. Last question for you. I was going to close by asking what you want everyone else to take from this new season of Black Lady Sketch Show. And I was kind of into asking you what the biggest takeaways might or should, or what you want them to be for people who aren't Black women, for men, for white people, etc. But then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to center them or us right now. I want to center Black women and ask you what you hope the biggest takeaway is for Black women who tune in to the newest season of Black Lady Sketch Show.
Well, honestly, I mean, the biggest thing for me is the joy and hopefully a little relaxation. Like, we have had such a tough year, all of us as a country, but particularly as Black women. And so if I can give anyone a half hour of forgetting about the past year, laughing and relaxing, that's good enough for me. There are so many fun characters and sketches that I know people are going to love. I know that I can already guess what some of the quotes and Halloween costumes are going to be that are going to come out of it. But to me, right now, I just know that we all need a laugh. So I hope that everybody gets one.
Yeah. I am looking forward to seeing Black joy like that in your show and everywhere else I can find it. Because you're right, we need it. Thank you
And
so
we deserve
much.
it. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah, we deserve it. Always a pleasure. Come back again soon.